All right. So what I'd like to go ahead and do is introduce the MVPs on the line to you. So I know I see one. I'm not as familiar with the newest batch of MVPs, so forgive me. So we'll start with Dale. If you could just introduce yourself, tell us who you work for, if you're at liberty to say, and in your area of expertise. So go ahead, Dale.
Absolutely. I am Dale Ziegler. I work for the Kansas City Southern Railway here in Kansas City. I have been an admin and declarative developer for about 5 years. So anything on the declarative side of the house, I absolutely love.
Awesome. Any other MVPs I'm missing out there? Or maybe on the phone?
Hi, this is David Chang. I'm with Idealist Consulting, and I do about half development work in Apex and Visualforce, and the other half on the declarative side, third-party application side.
Awesome. Thanks, David. All right. Any other MVPs out on the line there that I'm missing? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So who wants to kick us off with the first question? And don't be shy. This is not the place.
And if anybody is shy, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I actually have a validation rule issue, and I posted it to the MVP Office Hours group.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
I just thought that's what I was going to call out was that this is Dale. That's what I was going to call out was if anybody was shy, we did have one just make it into the success group. So good. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So we actually had a support ticket come in because somebody had deleted a field, not deleted a field, deleted a value in a field, and then they went to go add it back in and they couldn't. So I was surprised to hear that they could actually remove the value of the field, and I checked my validation rule. Seems like it should be working. But if they are removing a value in one of my fields that I'm checking, and I haven't is changed, so I do is changed in the field name, it should theoretically prevent the removal of that value, but it seems that that's not the case. It certainly prevents them from putting it back in, but not removing it. Why?
So
and I looked up is changed, and I couldn't find anything.
So I'm looking at your validation rule here, and you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. You want me to walk you through it so it makes more sense? You don't have to try to figure it out.
Well, one thing that I would just bounce back to everybody, before we do that is I see that you have the comments notations in there. Do those work in validation rules, or are those just for formula fields? Like Jared, do you know? Or
sorry, I'm getting over to it.
I haven't put comments into validation rules, but I presume that if there's no error, it should be okay.
Right.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
I would presume that as well. Just you know how Salesforce likes to have a happy little surprise here and there. That's all.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to go ahead and walk through what it is that you're trying to.
So what the goal of this validation rule is we actually provide data intelligence. That's what our company does, and so business intelligence. And so we're like a Reuters or something like that. We cover, or S&P. Actually, we're just bought by S&P. We cover companies. So we'll basically look at a company and look at all their public information and give business intelligence on that. So for those companies, we migrate from our internal systems where we do that work into Salesforce, and then we prevent people from changing certain fields, because if it's a company that we're covering, then we know that that's the best, possible data. So there are certain fields that we migrate in, so those are the ones at the bottom, the billing information, their website, their fax number, which is kind of bizarre that we care about that, SIC codes, ticker symbol, and then the key instant is our key field from that other external ID field from that other system that we do our matching on. So once this is migrated in and it is set to be either publicly traded or covered, we do not allow people to change any of those values. What's happening, though, is it is allowing people to, the only thing that I'm aware of is the key instant one. That's the one that just came up today, that it allowed someone to delete it, and then that same person, when they said, oops, I shouldn't have done that, it did not allow them to add it back in. So it looks like the is changed criteria is working if you're adding or changing data, but not if the change is a removal of that data. And that's really confuses me. I couldn't find any documentation on that.
So this was a user that removed the value from the field. Are you absolutely sure they didn't delete it by highlighting and hitting the space bar? Because I think space might still constitute a value.
Well, I actually reproduced it in our test environment. I logged in as them, and then I also just did it as myself, because even system administrators, I have to log in as one of my 2 bypass users there, Integration and Testovich, in order to bypass this validation rule. So I was able to 100% reproduce it. I was able to delete it. I was not able to add it back in until I went into one of those bypass users and did it from them.
So this validation rule was working previously, and it just has now stopped?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, it is partially working. It's preventing people from changing them if there is a value there. It's just not preventing them from the new value being blank.
Gotcha.
And maybe it's always been that way and we never caught it. I really don't know. I could do like a history report, because we track all of these fields, and I could see if that exists. But
so what's tricky about one of the things to remember when you reference actual record IDs is if you're using the 15 or the 18. If you use the 18, it needs to be bound by the case safe ID function, because I actually found in my org about a month or 2 ago, truth be told, I failed part of an audit because of this. I in a validation rule, tried to say where record type ID equals 18 character, and it just blew right past it. And the way to fix it was I put case safe ID around it, whereas if I had just done record type ID equals the 15, it would have worked the way that it was supposed to. So I saw that you put redacted on your IDs. Are the lengths of those IDs 15? Well, no, you're fine. You're fine. Are they? They're what?
They're 15 characters. Yeah.
They are the 15. Okay.
So I don't know if maybe you guys can try to reproduce this as well, since this is happening in both my production and my sandbox, and I believe the sandboxes have been upgraded, so I don't think it's a new release issue. Can anybody else try to see if you try to do an is changed on a validation rule, and you go to a record that has a value and remove it? Will it let you remove that value?
I think the issue is in the not is blank key instance C, because if you delete the value, if you're doing an is changed and a not is blank in the same formula, all encompassed in an and the validation rule, if the rule is true, if the rule evaluates to true, then that's when you want to throw the error, right?
Oh, so you think it's the fact that, because I'm looking to see, does it have a key instant, and if it does, don't change these things. But by having that, when they change it to not have the key instant, then it doesn't actually meet that validation rule, so that's why it actually...
Exactly.
Ah. So I can just add a prior value or move out or something like that.
Yeah.
Just do another or in there to say, and if this one is changed, make sure that the prior value was not null or not.
Right.
Had to be something simple. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. Who has Chrissy, you said you may have a question?
Yeah, so is there a way to tell if a field is being used or referenced in a trigger?
Without trying to delete it?
Well, so
That's how I
so
do it.
it's
Is
funny
try to
because
delete it.
what's funny is what led me to that question is when I started to hear the previous question, I was like, oh, I have a validation rule that's not working too. And so then I went to look at it, and it's based on this field called, so the rule is trying to ensure that before people can proceed past 50% probability on an opportunity, that they have a primary contact rule assigned. And so I look at the rule, and there's this field called primary contact assigned __C. So I go look at that field, and it's there, but I don't see it's just there. It's just a checkbox. It's not a formula or anything. So I was like, oh, I wonder what's updating that field. I don't overtly see any trigger that should be updating it. So maybe nothing is updating it, and that's why my validation rule doesn't work. But I didn't know if there was a way to tell if that field is referenced. Like I tried to just search in setup, and I didn't find it.
You might be able to pull an Eclipse download of the metadata and do a full source search. It's a little tedious, but it might help you sneak up on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the two ways to go about that. One way, the easy way, is to create a sandbox, and then in the sandbox try to delete that field, like you just said, and then they'll tell you whether that field is used in a trigger or workflow rules too. I think, right? If it's using a workflow rule, it'll throw an error saying you can't delete it yet. Right. So if you want to learn if you want to install and configure the Eclipse IDE, you can use that as well to search throughout the entire your Salesforce instance, like in email templates and list views. So that way you can search for a custom field name throughout all the different objects in Salesforce, including your email template and custom report types and so on and so forth.
Okay. I like the idea of trying to do it in my sandbox.
Yeah. Now,
well, that's why my rule isn't working, so good to know.
Well, and don't forget, and especially Sandbox being a safe place, if you are able to successfully delete your field, when you undelete it, don't forget, 'cause it catches me out all the time, that the field gets renamed with DEL at the end, which can mess up other references. So when you go to undelete it, make sure you take out the DEL as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, all. Squire, you have a question.
Yeah, hopefully easy one. We have a production instance that went from a standard sign-on process, create users and send out messages, to single sign-on. And in doing so, we ended up with quite a few duplicates of users. And while we've deactivated them, they're still searchable. So we're trying to come up with a way to make those people, the inactive people, not come up in a global search. Any suggestions? I have an idea, but it's not a very good one.
So I'm going to listen with curious ears, because we're in the middle of a single sign-on ADFS implementation right now, and you kind of just scared me a little bit with that. So yeah, if that's something I need to look out for, thank you.
Yeah. What we had done is we created unique names because we knew it was going to be single sign-on at some point. So the usernames were customized for kind of the pilot, but once we converted, those old names are still out there. So.
Gotcha.
But I mean, we also have situations where we're global, and so on occasion, Exchange servers will change the naming convention in those emails, and then next time they log in, it creates a brand new user, and we still get duplicates in those cases. So. My thought is that I could turn on user sharing, make users private, and then a sharing rule that basically says if it's active, share it with everybody, and then it would share every active user. But it seems like a workaround when it feels like there probably should be a better way to do it.
Oop, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so the sharing rule, that actually was the idea I had, was a sharing rule. Kind of another way you could do it is if those people are no longer active, you could just go in and just change their name to something else, like delete me if you don't care about them anymore.
Right.
That's the kicker about the global search, is it's a global search.
Yeah, and I had originally thought about, like you said, making them, ex-employee or something, but they still show up, and if they still are related, we have a lot of lookups back to user, that aren't just owner, and we don't want any of those to pop up and look unusual too. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, the only thing that might bite you on the sharing rule idea, that's a good idea, is that if you have records that are owned by inactive users, you may have some access issues around that if you make it private and only shareable on active.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We were gonna, before we implemented anything, we were gonna do a full ownership scan of all of our major objects just to make sure there weren't any outliers. So I appreciate you reminding me of that.
I would say check your ownership as well as if you've created any basic user lookups on records in addition to owner.
Yep. All right, thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. All right, who else has a question?
I've got another one. This is Squire, but I don't want to take the whole session.
Oh, go for it.
All right. So this is just more of a best practice. We have a vendor who we have an unmanaged package in place, and the test classes are failing. That's because they weren't written well. So we've asked them to rewrite them for better coverage, and what they delivered back to me to update the package is effectively an uninstall reinstall of the package, not an update, which is concerning because it's going to wipe our data, and I don't know what else the impact would be. There should be a better way to get their update to their unmanaged package into our platform than that, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the double-edged sword of an unmanaged package, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, with and just for background for anybody else listening here, there's the managed package versus unmanaged. The managed, you can push that stuff in. The unmanaged, you're kind of stuck kludging it in, kind of.
All right. So let me build on that then. So
sure.
Then the appropriate answer would be to treat it as though I were writing all those changes and do it with some sort of merge functionality or an IDE or something, rather than do a package uninstall. Just do a merge.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. That's actually what I was hoping you'd say, because I feel more comfortable with that. But thanks.
Yeah, I would be careful with the package uninstall route, depending on how that package is put together. If there was any objects or data associated with that package when it went in, if you uninstall it, it would nuke all that stuff. So yeah, it's like I said, it's the double-edged sword of unmanaged. Yeah, just treat it as your own code. Stick it in your repo if you have a repo, or just treat it like your own code.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. We got some, just so everybody on the call is aware, we got some additional MVPs who have joined the call. So the brain power is just through the roof right now. So if you have any really difficult questions, now's the time to ask them.
Who are they?
They could be a mystery. No, it's you guys want to introduce yourself? Andy, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. My name is Andy Betcher. I'm a Salesforce.com MVP out of Minnesota. My expertise is around development, administration, continuous integration, kind of the whole gutsy stuff of coding.
Nice. Brian, are your kids to a point where you can?
Yeah, they stopped screaming. My name is Brian Kwong. I'm Vice President of Delivery Operations for Better Partners and Salesforce MVP based out of Madison, Wisconsin. I'm also admin and dev certified.
Awesome.
And he's a wizard. He's a wizard, too.
Yeah, he is a wizard. Nana, you want to go?
Hey, yeah. Great to hear from you guys. I am Nana Gregg. I am a Senior Salesforce Administrator at BRG and a Salesforce MVP. I've been an administrator for 11 years. It's awesome.
Awesome. And then Phil.
Hey everyone, my name's Philip Southern. I am a independent Salesforce consultant and developer. I am out on the East Coast of North Carolina. and I have been doing Salesforce work for about 10 years.
So a little bit. Okay. All right. So there you go, guys. We've got a lot of expertise on the call. If you have questions, let's hear some more questions. Happy to help.
I've got a simple question. It's not too complicated. Yeah, it's Bruno out in Canada. When we have static resources and we want to reference them in formulas, is the proper way to do so just say /resource and then the name of your static resource? I just want to make sure that that is okay, and when you deploy to production, everything works properly.
What are you exactly trying to do, like display an image?
Exactly, like 1 stars, 2 stars, that kind of thing. But my own custom image.
So I'm digging through documentation. I do that stuff all the time. I'm digging through documentation on the exact. You can't just do /resource. I think it's is it URL4? Ryan or Phil?
Well, I had tried a few things with URL4, and then it said you only use that for Visualforce. So I found a post that said you can do it, and I got it to work. I thought, okay, I got it to work. But that's why I'm asking this question. I'm just like, is that okay. Best practice, I guess you should say. So it actually does work if you say you don't use URL4, you just say image, and then you say single quote, or I think it's doubles quote /resource, and then / the name. It does work. But I just want to know if that's the best practice that others have used.
Do you have any type of like IDs on versioning or anything like that outside of the name in the field?
Nope. No,
okay.
Just public. When you set up a static resources, public, private. I think that's the only thing you can really set. The cache.
Okay. I've seen some kind of both ways. I've seen people that put they like go into the static resource and or a document even, and then just get the URL and smack the URL in there. And
I've done that before. I've done that before, but then when you deploy, you worry, right? What if they change your instance, for example? Then you're in trouble, right? Like Sandbox, CS3, and all that.
I've used them when it comes with image files, and so if you do like image function in parentheses, and then in your quotes you just do /resource/ and the name of your static resource.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, it should work with that, and that way it's going to pull based off of whatever the instance is that you're currently on. So
that's what I'm thinking.
Sandbox, it would work if it's in production work as long as the static resource is actually there.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I just wanted to hear it from everyone else. So, okay, I think I've got my answer. It sounds like it's good. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Who's next?
So I can pop back in because I tried to delete my field in the Sandbox, and now I found it, and it's in a trigger. But I can't read this well enough to figure out if it's actually doing what I think it's doing. I'm sure one of you looking at this would be like, oh, yeah, boop, boop, boop. But is there any way I can show you what this trigger is doing? I found the field, so I can't delete the field, and but it doesn't seem like it's working, that it's checking it to be true when it's supposed to be true. Or is that too involved of a question for this current moment?
This is code, right? You're talking about?
What's that?
Is this code you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a trigger.
Okay. I would say for this specific venue, we don't have any screen sharing ability easily accessible here. The best thing for you to do is to post that up in the developer communities. You go to developer.salesforce.com and go to the forums. Post it there, and then, Jared, is there a specific hashtag? I can't remember off the top of my head for the MVP office hours.
Yeah, there's a group. The MVP, you can post it in the MVP office hours group, and we can take a look at it there.
Yeah.
On the dev site or in the success community?
If you post your code in the dev site first and make sure you format it as code, so then we have it there, and then take the URL for your forum post, and then come to the MVP office hours and post it in there. You could also, if you're on Twitter, you can use the hashtag AskForce and post it out there as well to get some visibility to it. That would be the best way, because you're right, we would kind of need to see it.
Yep. Cool.
awesome.
Yeah, totally. And even if you want, I mean, I love looking at that stuff. If you want to mention me on Twitter, I'm just @AndyBetcher. You can just throw the link in there too, and I can take a peek.
So everybody tweet to him now.
Yeah.
Tweet away. Raise
Whatever
my
you want.
clout score. Go for it.
life questions, you name it. All right.
I mean, I made an appointment for tomorrow with somebody to work on a flow, so on a weekend. So I mean, understand the nerdiness for sure.
That's pretty legit.
Yay, flow!
All right, who's next? Who else has a question? We got a lot of developer minds on here too, so if you got some developer questions, now's your time. And yeah, flow and process builder as well, I should say.
Okay, I'll jump. This is Julie.
Yeah,
this
go
is
for it.
really small. Is there any way when you're deploying a flow to have it not automatically be deactivated when you deploy it? The reason I mention this is because we had one of our newer admins accidentally include a flow in a change set that they didn't need to include. And when they deployed it, it went inactive and sat like that for a couple of weeks until people realized that our records weren't updating as they should.
Which went inactive? The new version? Or?
Basically, it added another version, which was exactly the same as the last version because nothing had actually been updated on it. And then even though it was active in our sandbox, when we deploy the change set, it sets it to inactive. And we've seen that with every flow we've ever done. We have to actually manually go in and activate every flow after we deploy if it was in the change set.
You do have to manually activate the new version, and I'll be honest, I forget to do it every single time. But you still have the most previous version in production active, so it's not completely inactive.
It actually made that one inactive as well.
Really?
It should not have done.
Yeah. So, okay.
Whenever I've deployed flow from a sandbox using chain sets, as in a new version of it, the new version comes over as inactive. But if I had an active version on production, it still stays active because it didn't change. There was nothing edited in that version.
Yeah, that's bizarre because the older version, basically we had two versions, and I could see that in the sandbox there was an active version and it was modified like in March, last modified in March. And then I saw that there was a deployment and it was in our change set and it had deployed another version. Basically it was exactly the same and then activated the March version that was already out there as well as.
So I'm honestly still dipping my toe into the differences between flow and the auto-launched flow. Could that maybe have something to do with it? Because
it's definitely an auto-launched flow for sure.
And it wouldn't make a difference. The only difference between an auto-launch flow and flow is an auto-launch flow contains no screen elements. So there's nothing being shown to the user or the user can't input anything directly to the flow.
Yes, and so this was an auto-launched flow that was launched by a process, and we had made a change to the process, and so I'm sure the admin thought they had to include the flow in the change set as well, even though it hadn't been updated, and then so they deployed both and didn't, I think, of the fact that they should have checked that flow to turn it on. So, all right, that would be. Is there an idea out there about maybe not deploying flows or having a setting for that? Do you know?
You know, I'm actually looking at the chain set considerations for flows documentation, and it says if the flow, if active flow is in the chain set, it will go deployed as inactive. That's that's for sure. And if the flow has a no active version when you upload the outbound chain set, that's different. But it doesn't say anything in here that's going to inactivate an already active flow in production.
Yeah. Well, it definitely did that, so I guess I can contact Salesforce support and they can tell us if this is.
Just out of curiosity, if you pull a setup audit log can you verify that your admin who deployed the wrong flow didn't intentionally and then unintentionally deactivate the new version, thinking that they were fixing something?
That's what I was thinking. Was did somebody just flip the switch manually?
I will check that. I'm pretty sure that they didn't, but I will check that. I think I think what they did is they just looked at the dependencies and said, oh, I better deploy this as well, and then better add this as well to the change set, the flow, even though the flow didn't change, and then just deployed it. But since we always forget.
And the only reason I ask that is because we, since you can build a flow in prod if you wanted to live on the edge, and the idea that deploying it and turning it on and then being like, oh wait, I didn't have to do that, and not really realizing by activating version 2 you deactivated version 1. I think that happens quite a bit until people feel real comfortable with that. So I have the suspicion that you're going to see it, but it'd be great to find out for sure.
I'm going to look.
And I'll be honest, speaking as a solo admin, I know when something like that goes wrong, it's my fault, so I just get to point the finger at myself. So.
I don't want to point fingers. I just want to be able to control it. That's all I want.
Oh, absolutely. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, all. All right.
I have kind of a related question, actually.
Go for it.
I've only built a couple of process builders in my life. Are those change settable? Because I have yet to find that, or are they under some kind of kludgy code if you want to include them in a change set?
So you can include processes in a change set, and they show up as under the flow topic when you deploy when you build a change set.
Okay.
Or if you're using the IDE for that matter, I think they still list under flow, because the little note is that process builder is just building a flow behind the scenes, and so that's where you'll find it.
Gotcha.
So far, I have not had any issues deploying processes through chain sets. I've heard from a couple of people in the community that they've had some weird issues, but I think those were all involving process builders they were pretty complex, where they had calling flow and then flow was calling Apex and so forth. But I think for like a straight up, pretty straightforward process, it should be fine.
Yeah, and I can echo that. What I've seen is any process builder that is reaching out or calling out to Apex. Anytime I've done change sets, hasn't been the best experience so for those I just net new create them in production. But I will say I haven't tried it in a while. I had issues so much with it that anytime it was going to reach out to code, I just created them clean in production.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Who else has a question?
If we all get bored, I have a philosophical question, but it's not high importance.
It's Friday. All things philosophical are important.
Go for it. Why not?
So I feel like part of the reason that I haven't jumped as much into Process Builder and Flow as I thought I would have by now is because there is code in my org that's doing things on opportunities primarily, and I guess I worry that I feel like the other admins here feel like kind of once you start down the code route, that if you start then doing declarative things at the same time, that you might create like conflicts or loops that you're not really anticipating. But I guess then I feel like that's a slippery slope of just saying like code all the things, which is not really sustainable either. So I guess how do you decide like if it's okay to, like I have a new thing I want to do and I feel like I think I can do it with Process Builder, but my habit has become that I should just try to figure out how to do it through code because that's what we do.
Well, I think your first thing you have to look for is obviously bulkification. If you're going to be running with large data sets, Flow and Process Builder are probably out.
Not necessarily, because yet in the Winter 16 release, they are changing how bulkification works with Process Builder and Flow. To the point where for most people, unless you're talking about millions of records, where you're expecting a process or flow to run, you're probably fine. The issue that most people have when it comes to working with Apex and then using Process Builder and Process Flow is making sure you're not hitting query limit on transactions. And that's really the main concern. There really isn't a lot of concerns about you having to deal with like this never-ending loop. As long as you know what your code is doing and what records you're updating, you should be able to prevent that, and your code should be able to prevent that for that matter. Because technically speaking, you could do run into the same loop with a workflow row. You just have to realize, what is the order of operations? What's going to happen first and when? And what do you actually need it for? So, like, if you had a use case where you wanted to say, I need to grab what the previous value of a record was and then do an update on another object or another record after the update was done, you have to use code for that, because you can't get access to what the prior values were in Process and Flow right now. And you can't say, do this after or do this at a later date. It's all one basically transaction, just like a workflow is. My knee-jerk reaction is you should do things declaratively first when you can do things declarative. Code is great for a lot of things, but in my opinion, it's kind of you have no other choice because that's what your requirements require, or you're dealing with some really heavy back-end system needs, like you are going through and, say, batching through 1 million records at a time or something like that. Because to maintain it and track it is significantly more difficult. If you have, if your process changed subtly and your logic changes, you now have to go through the process of updating all the code versus potentially just clicking a new version of a process builder and changing the criteria subtly. So that's my personal preference: is declarative first, then code when you have to code. I mean,
and I think
and the two aren't mutually exclusive.
Right. We haven't really gone back. Like, there may be some things that we coded, a year ago that now with Process Builder we could do in terms of, related record kind of things. And I don't think we've really gone back through and evaluated what could be shifted out of the code that we have because it's working and we don't take the time to poke the bear because, we have other new things to do. So.
Yeah, and you're gonna, what you're questioning is what a lot of companies are gonna have to question over the next months. Is as from a process automation standpoint, as Process Builder and Flow become not necessarily viable solutions, but larger solutions that can accommodate more and more scenarios. You're going to come to a crossroads where strategically you're going to have to say, okay, we know these tools are at a higher functionality level than they were before. Now we need to go back strategically and look at our code and see if there is functionality we can take out of our code to put in Process Builder or Flow. So, yeah, philosophically, I think your mind is in the right space that a lot of companies are going to start having to ask themselves over the next 6, 9, 12 months.
One other, as long as we're talking philosophically speaking, to build on what Brian said, I feel like declarative is always the way to go, but that's a slippery slope too, because I think some people feel declarative means you don't have to be as diligent as you would with code, and that's completely untrue. Especially as the power of Flow and Process Builder increases, people still have to think like a developer to get them right. But I think declarative is the way to start, and just take your time with it.
Yeah, I'd like to second that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not an MVP, but the first few processes and flows that we built, we are still cleaning them up because they have cross-object updates that are triggering validation rules and failing, and so yeah, you definitely have to be very careful.
Well, and going back to the try declarative first, that's why at the start of all these calls, whenever I introduce myself, I say I'm an admin and a declarative developer. I don't know code, I don't know programmatic, but if you touch any of your process, you are developing. So.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to go back. I did download my setup audit trail for the flow that was deactivated, and I can see where I must be crazy because I swear in the past when a change set was deployed, I couldn't see anything in the change set, but now I'm seeing everything in my setup audit trail for the change set. And I can see where it's like creating versions and then deactivating versions, and everything's happening like one right after the other for everything in that change set. So, yeah, it did deactivate it. So I'll just point it out to Salesforce and see what they say.
But at least, even though it's not what you expected to see, at least we know for sure where it happened, right?
Yeah, that's true. I do know where it happened.
I'm going to build my process in Flow and see how it goes.
Awesome. Thanks, all. Good stuff. All right, we got about 12 minutes left. Who else has a question? Any questions on Lightning? Anything?
Give it time.
Give it time. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in an organization that I don't know that we'll ever get to Lightning, but I have been following a lot of like the release success group and everything, and it is interesting to follow people asking questions about. I noticed campaigns aren't supported yet, and a lot of the standard functionality. So it is interesting to sit back and see how it's progressing, and hoping that all the stuff that I think or a lot of the stuff we grew accustomed to in the Classic will still carry through into Lightning. My 2 cents.
I'll jump in and say that I turned on in my sandbox this week and built a dashboard with our own data and just kind of messed with it a little bit to give it, like 5 columns and just kind of tweaked it. And my CEO walked by and I flipped it around to show her, and she's like, I want to be a beta tester, whatever you can do to get it for me. So that visual UI for specifically executive teams and up, I think that's going to be a big win, but it's definitely going to take a lot to roll out.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything? All right. If nobody else has any questions, we'll go ahead and end it early. I appreciate everyone joining. Thanks, MVPs, for your help and great questions. If there's any follow-up or if you have anything, feel free to post to the Office Hours group. And if you have any feedback for us, definitely let us know. But everybody have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on the next Office Hours.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.